So of course that's true for the Shunbun in general, but what about this particular watch, the cheapest Shunbun on eBay? Do I think it was worth it? To put it simply, yes. I bought the cheapest Shunbun on eBay. I've been obsessing about this thing for at least 3 years now, I think. Let's see if I got ripped off, what my thoughts are, and if it was all worth it. Does it live up to the hype? You might have been seeing a ton of YouTubers and just social media in general all promoting this thing. Let's get into it. So pulling up the original listing, the sale price was $45.98 and 78 cents, US dollars, and the total was $4,920. This was used and from the US, so there's no tariff. Which some things I was seeing say around $600, but everything I was seeing was closer to around $1,000. There were some seemingly good deals on Chrono 24, but a lot of those were in Japan, and so that tariff would apply. And you gotta keep an eye out that some of them have the watch in hand, and some of them are almost like drop shipping. They just live in Japan and go to the store and buy one and ship it to you. I don't know what would be wrong with that, but it's just something to be aware of. The only thing I'll admit is that I was looking at so many different watches that I didn't see that this one didn't come with the box. It did have the warranty cards and the little folder, the original receipt, which was purchased from a watch shop in the US, but I'll admit I did want the box too. But they do sell it around $100 on eBay. Like I said, I've been at least semi-obsessed with this thing for over 3 years now, pulling it up every now and then. Honestly, I just like looking at watches, so I'm always on eBay just checking out cool stuff. And this was kind of by far the cheapest I had ever seen a Shunbun. That's SBGA413, by the way. It gets kind of confusing because they later also made a much more pink version. What I like about this one, the original, is that though it's a pink watch, what you might have heard about it is true. It's very subtle. It's really silvery, and in certain lights takes on that subtle pink hue. And so this was the intersection of just about everything I was looking for. It was obviously the cheapest one I'd ever seen. It had the original receipt, and not just something from like a local pawn shop. It was from a major watch seller in the US. Basically the second best option you can have to just buying from Grand Seiko themselves. Had the warranty card and some of the original packaging. And it all goes through the eBay authenticity guarantee process. If you don't know about it, I know eBay might seem kinda sketchy for buying such expensive luxury goods, but they're really trying to fix that and kinda rebrand eBay to not just being some online swap shop or yard sale, but they're really trying to make themselves the go-to place to buy certified cards, things like luxury clothing, shoes, and of course watches. I'll get into this, but you can't fake a Grand Seiko. Nonetheless, everybody really does respect this eBay authenticity guarantee process. eBay bought up a separate company that was already doing this authentication, and so they've incorporated that into the eBay platform. People are buying things way more expensive than this. They know that with the rise of super clone movements out of China, that they have to be incredibly accurate at this. But again, when it comes to Grand Seikos, there aren't fakes out there. You might see some dial swaps that are obviously fake, they just have a really cheap price on them, but nothing will have that smooth spring drive movement. The problem is almost every luxury watch out there, like Rolex for example, is ticking at 28,800 beats per hour. And there are a ton of cheap movements, mostly from ETA and Miyota, that can do this. And so it can look like a Rolex on the outside, tick at the same speed and smoothness of a Rolex, but you can really only tell that it's a fake by opening them up. And I'm sure you've seen some videos here on YouTube where experts even have a hard time telling the difference. But again, the spring drive is the only movement that has no tick. It's so complex and only available through them. If you don't know, it's the genius use of elements that were developed for the Quartz watches, and using that to regulate the mechanical movement. It combines the best part of an automatic mechanical watch and the electromagnetic aspects of Quartz to generate this new second-hand movement that is both frictionless and seamless. It is a steady release of energy that glides along, it doesn't tick. It's a true technological masterpiece, but it's also a philosophical and artistic triumph. I know people make fun of how pretentious Grand Seiko lovers can be.
The icy tundra of the snowflake style really physically makes me feel cold.
It's true, and the memes are funny. Their own marketing is hilarious sometimes. Like how this new dial was inspired by a moment that only lasts for 3 seconds on the 3rd hour of spring, when the first light beam penetrates the lone raindrop on the bonsai tree planted by our company's founder, which now sits on the rooftop of the Grand Seiko HQ. And it's just like a cool green dial. I think this watch is the pinnacle of Grand Seiko because it is so Japanese. There are artistic choices from the design of the band, having no bezel, the bold choice to go with a pink hue. I literally can't think of any other watch, especially not one in 40mm that's aimed at men. And the dial face was inspired by this really unique moment when the cherry blossoms are on the surface of water, and it has this silvery pink effect. But although this love can get a bit silly, maybe over-romanticizing, seriously though, from the bottom up, this is the culmination of an incredible story. with the Grand Seiko victories in the 1968 Geneva Observatory that were so embarrassing to the Swiss that the sore losers ended the competition. The 70s would see Seiko push the quartz revolution. High-beat 36,000 BPH movements became available at affordable prices to the everyday Japanese people, and the European makers called it the quartz crisis because of how devastating it was to their market share. Things like Swatch Group had to be formed to save the other luxury brands, including Omega, essentially using the cheaper offerings to keep the luxury pieces alive. And even Rolex would make a rare quartz watch. It was said to be only around 25,000 pieces ever produced since 1977, and the stigma would be that quartz equals cheap. It's not a real watch. And that's why I say that the spring drive is an amazing philosophical choice. I hate when people do guilt by association and can't just operate off of first principles. Yoshikazu Akane was not limited by this. He compared his idea of a gliding second hand to someone who was coming downhill on a bike. Energy that was stored, i.e. to get you up the hill, or the energy capture by an automatic movement when you move your wrist, if it could be released in a way like someone coming down a hill, where you wouldn't need bursts of extra energy, but really you need brakes in order to keep it smooth. This could be achieved with the electromagnetic aspects of the quartz movement. And so his vision combines the best of the automatic and the quartz movement, having no battery, none of the cheap aspects of a quartz, and the most advanced mechanical movement ever produced. All of that is before you get into the actual finishing, which Grand Seiko is most known for. And I gotta admit, finally having it in person, it is insanely impressive. The way the indices, and especially the hands, catch the light. Probably heard it said a million times, but the camera just doesn't do it justice. And to the idea of what luxury is supposed to be and getting what you paid for, the Zaratsu polishing and the fact that these molds were handmade, all of it is just what people think they're getting with other luxury brands. So of course that's true for the Shunbun in general, but what about this particular watch, the cheapest Shunbun on eBay? Do I think it was worth it? To put it simply, yes. One of the small things that caught my eye is that the original lister said that it was a quartz movement. You could see why there's confusion here on how to list it, but it is an automatic. Really, the spring drive is its own thing, but it just showed me that maybe the person didn't really understand what they had. It wasn't ridiculously low priced. It wasn't like they had it up for $1,000 or something. Obviously, they knew it sells in the mid $5,000, but I had never seen it dip down to around $4,600. But the pics that he uploaded actually made it look worse than it looks in real life. I'll put them side by side and hopefully you can see what I mean. I don't know if he just never took care of it or washed it or what was going on. Maybe when eBay does the authentication process, maybe they clean it up a bit. I'm not sure. But I wasn't really worried because they explicitly said that the crystal was perfect and it did look so in the pictures. I'm kind of excited to try it on different bands like suede and leather. I really want to see it on like a python or a stingray. But this weird discoloration on the left side of the case and this kind of smudge stain look on the bracelet, I actually wasn't too worried about them because I had seen people in forums saying that it's relatively easy to get out. Some people said that titanium does absorb oils a lot, so maybe this person just literally never cleaned it, which is kind of gross to think about, something you should think about when buying used watches. But I was like, I'll just take it apart, and people were saying just hit it with a really soft toothbrush and it should be fine, which would save me like $3,000 from buying it brand new. Which, side note, if you ever just want to use ChatGPT to do a really simple calculation for you on what you would need to sell your watch at in order to break even, because when you buy it, you're paying for taxes and shipping, and then when you sell it, you're going to have all those listing fees, including that authentication process. So because my break even was around $5,000 and I never even saw them drop that low, I'm pretty confident that if I ever want or need to sell it, I'll at least break even, meaning I get to enjoy it essentially for free. And speaking of how I was worried it was stained or really dirty, to some of the weird quirks people make fun of with Grand Seiko, in their how to preserve the quality of the watch section, under the band, there are some hilarious things here. I don't know what absolute barbarians they think we are in the rest of the world, and what that means that half of their sales are going to the US. Hopefully this isn't in direct response to a flood of emails, but it says, quote, moisture, sweat, or soil will cause rust even on stainless steel bands if they are left over a long time. Your stainless steel watch should not be rusting. I've had really cheap Invictas forever. I'm not like a clean freak about them. I don't treat them extra special. I don't know what you're doing if your stainless steel watch is rusting. It also warns about rust in the steel pins that are part of even the titanium bracelets, and that they warn that these pins could hurt you, which in a way wasn't really rust related, but it was odd foreshadowing. When I was resizing it, I've never done this, but I pushed the spring bar all the way through, and it went pretty damn far into my finger. It was pretty creepy. You could feel like muscle. And on that note, Grand Seiko really should be critiqued for not having any on-the-fly micro adjustments on the bracelet. There's really no excuse for this. I read one time some lame thing that it would affect the profile or how it looks. You guys made the spring drive. You can figure this out. And of course, on the newer versions, priced around 10 plus grand, they do have that. But this is becoming standard on much cheaper brands. Though I will say, because it has these little half links, I was able to size it to where it weirdly doesn't bother me as much as other watches do. That might be just because of the weight. Because it's titanium, it's a lot lighter, and that does bring me to my biggest, not regret or critique, but it's just something you really should be aware of. I've listened to other YouTubers who pointed this out, but I just did not grasp how big of a difference this was. If you can, I do think you should try and handle it in person, because it's so odd to have what I kind of consider a grail watch for me. I think because of the intersection of the tech and how unique it is, and just the story of Grand Seiko and Seiko in general, I don't think it's crazy to say that this is one of the best watches in the entire world. It's nowhere near the most expensive, and maybe other watches should also be in that category, but it is tied for first in my view. But saying all that, it does feel, the simplest way to put this, cheap. The bracelet is so light, which again I salute, and it's just so Japanese. You know, Gundams in the lore are made out of a special titanium and all that too. It's just, you're wanting to be high tech, you're wanting to stress what the future of watchmaking could be, and I get why you would go with titanium as a material, and just like someone who can't get over the fact that Seiko is on a dial that costs thousands of dollars, I mean, you could get an old used Rolex for the cost of this. As a buyer, I gotta get past the fact that it says Seiko on it. There's no gold or obvious flashy bits, and it feels lighter than my Invictas. It's closer to my Casio. At the end of the day, it's why I say it is a combination of tech and art. I respect the artist's decision to put all this together. That's why I think it is so Japanese. For different reasons, I don't think Americans would really make something like this. There's a je ne sais quoi to a certain weight of just pure gold on your wrist. It makes it feel more luxury. It makes you feel rich and successful, which is not nothing. Of course, there's vain idiots who think like that, but you don't have to feel bad for thinking like that too. And also, like I said, I'm confused at the lack of smudging and weird stains that appeared to be in the pictures. And when I do notice in person the little scratch or scuff that's right below the 6, and there's a little like ding pit kind of by the crown, I am very satisfied with this deal. Again, getting this around $3K and less than it would be if I bought it brand new, for these very minor scuffs that, one, I might have likely done myself. I mean, especially these ones around the bracelet right on the bottom. I didn't even mention those because I'm going to do that by myself pretty soon. But yeah, overall, amazing deal. I do love it. I just think some of those things you should be made aware of. And I want to end on the point that it really is celebrating a rich watchmaking culture in Japan. It was bold, creative, and actually innovating more than any other watch brand out there. There was recently big drama with Omega, with the whole idea of parts being made in China. I think this whole obsession that the watch grew out of the soil of that country is kind of silly if you take it too far. We do live in a global market, even if brands like Rolex and Grand Seiko say that they are creating every aspect of that watch. And it is really impressive, from the actual mining and refining of the metals all the way up through the finished product, all happening in that country of origin. There's still something, like the chips used in the machinery that built the structure these artisans work in. The printers, stickers, boxes, something was coming from China. At least part of that whole chain from concept art to the watch being on your wrist, something came from China. But obviously the claim that Omega bracelets were being made in China is way bigger than that abstract point. Even more affordable French brands like Yema emphasize local sourcing and manufacturing. Quick to point out that everything comes from a 72-kilometer radius from Morteau, France. In the Franco-Swiss Jura region, it's right on the border of Switzerland in this really heavy watchmaking area. So while I think it's silly to over-focus on absolutely nothing ever being connected to China, there is still something special about it being produced by the people of that country and having this long tradition. And it actually makes Rolex and Grand Seiko way more unique than people think. There are a lot of assumptions with that Swiss-made title and just having an expensive price tag. I love Henry Archer. I'm going to do a video on my Osiris Mirage soon. To me, they might be the best overall watch brand right now, just for that intersection of creative, unique designs. Nobody's really playing with these natural elements like they are. And they're ticking all the technical boxes like the 28.8 BPH, sapphire glass, and on-the-fly micro adjustments are standard, and it only costs you around $500 to $800. They are incredible, but know what they are. They're powered by a Japanese Miyota movement. They're actually produced and finished, basically made and assembled in China. And they're designed and operated in Denmark. They're beautiful and a great value, but there is something more romantic about a Rolex or Grand Seiko, and especially this Grand Seiko, which so celebrates the culture of its people and actually pushes watch technology forward in the case of the spring drive. Let me know what you guys think. Obviously, I'm excited and happy about this purchase. Are there any annoyances or downsides to this watch that you've experienced that maybe I don't know about yet? What are your thoughts on buying used and from eBay specifically? And if you have suggestions for other videos, I plan on doing whole breakdowns of certain watches and even broader histories of brands. Like, subscribes, all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next one.